This man goes way back with Belichick to the Browns days. He was a general manager for the Browns and the Raiders and a longtime talent evaluator in this league from The Athletic and VSiN in Vegas. And also he's got his own podcast, the GM Shuffle podcast. Michael Lombardi back here on the show. How are you, Michael?
I am doing great, Rich. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, please. Great to have you back here on the show. Hey, look, I love Belichick, and I know you do as well. So I asked this question with the ultimate of respect. Is he drunk? Do you know if he's drunk? Michael,
well,
is he drunk?
I think, the one thing about Belichick that you have to understand is there's a variance in the marketplace. And I think if you just examine what's happened in the first couple of days of free agency, we've seen what we've been talking about all offseason is that nobody had cap room. And the teams that have cap room, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Jets, the Patriots, even Washington to a degree, are spending money. And the other teams are trying to recreate money. Yesterday was a huge day in restructures in the National Football League because teams are trying to get a little bit involved in free agency. The variance in the market, Rich, is the Patriots were just fortunate to have a ton of cap room. And yes, they're spending a lot of money, but they're getting high-quality players. Are they overpaying? You always overpay in free agency. But I think the talent base, the durability of the players they're signing, the age of the players that they're signing, and the impact that the players they're signing can improve their football team greatly.
I think the age is where I'd like to sort of linger with you a little bit here about the age of the players. That's an important thing for you, for us to I guess, spotlight here, because otherwise, right, these are the types of deals that the Patriots would just sit back and watch other teams make and try and win the league in the spring. And that's part of what kind of is so jarring about this for New England. So let's get started on it. The age of the players makes it a different than, say, any other year or any other team going to sign these players?
Well, I think what you want to do is sign young players who can develop. I mean, look at Jonnu Smith, who really has just tipped the surface. He's 25 years old. So he's not going to be too old when he gets to his second contract, when he gets to the third contract. Hunter Henry, the same thing. Matt Judon, all players are in their 20s. Henry Anderson in their 20s. And so when you sign players who have durability, who have youth, then you can count on them to make it to the field. When you sign older players, sometimes like it would happen in Philadelphia, it looks good on paper, and then when it's time to play games, you can't keep the players healthy. So I think there's a shift, but I think what people have forgotten a little bit too, if you go through Patriot history, is there was a time back after the Patriots lost to the Colts in a conference championship game, they flew to Hawaii. They were coaching, then the conference championship game loser had to coach the Pro Bowl. They went to Hawaii, and that week probably was the worst week for all Patriot coaches because they're in Hawaii and they're meeting at 6 o'clock every morning. And they came out of that meetings and they signed Wes Welker. They traded for Wes Welker, and they reshaped their team. And so this is a little bit like that. They're reshaping their team because they have to. They have no choice. And I know it's not what we're used to. And I'm not going to say they're not spending a lot of money, but they have this luxury because it's the variance in the market allows them to do it.
Michael Lombardi.
They can sign players.
Michael Lombardi here on the Rich Eisen Show from The Athletic and VSiN in Vegas with Brent Musburger here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, so what we got Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith and Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar. Here we go. And you got Damian Harris and Sony Michel and Rex Burkhead coming back running with Cam Newton at the quarterback spot. This is it, right? Like you see if N'Keal Harry actually can stick. Jacoby Myers, Edelman coming back healthy. Did I just basically name the Patriots' 2021 offense? And if so, do you think that this is a possible division winner with the Bills doing what they're doing, or an AFC winner with the Chiefs doing what they're doing, Michael?
Well, I think they obviously have to come together as a team, and they have to. And all these players sound great on paper, but they have to come together and play at a high level. I think what you're going to see is they're going to be in a lot of 12 personnel, one back, two tight ends. And with their running back and the way they ran the football last year, which is the only thing they did well offensively, was run the ball. it's going to be a challenge for defensive coordinators to say, do we play nickel against them in their two tight end sets? And can we match up in nickel with Smith and Henry? Or do we play our base and try to stop their run game, and then they create better matchups with their tight ends against our safeties and linebackers? So that is where they're going. When they were really good, when Gronk and Hernandez were at the top of their game, the Patriots could come out in 12 personnel and dictate what you did, and they could counterpunch whatever you went. You went nickel, they ran the ball. You went base, they threw the ball. And I think that's what we're going to see. But it's all got to come together. Edelman's not healthy yet, so I think that's a long way from him coming back. I think he's got to get himself healthy. Harry's got to prove with the competition that he can endure. James White probably will sign with Tampa Bay if I had my guess. And they've got running backs that I think they're going to add. They could even add to the running back group. So it's a work in progress. But I do think if with an off season and a preseason, a normal preseason, I think they'll be a competitive team.
So last one for you on this, and then we'll move on a little bit to the league writ large. We had Albert Breer on in the first hour of the show, and he basically said, similar to what you're saying, is that the Patriots had to do this. But the reason why they had to do this is because Bill missed on draft picks, and this is him admitting, I didn't hit on the tight ends, I didn't hit on any of these wide receivers, and I have to do this sort of thing. What do you say to that, Michael Lombardi?
Well, I think, the two tight ends they drafted last year, they were third round picks, so we'll see how they develop. They certainly could be the third tight ends in here. Keene's more of a fullback than he is actually a true Y on the line. I do think that, anybody who would say that they've been great in the draft, I think their talent level has dissipated. They've been picking low in the draft as well, and they typically go backwards. But when you look at some of the players that they currently have on their roster, the Sonny Michel was a good draft pick. Isaiah Wynn has to prove he can stay healthy, and he'll be a good draft pick. But I think their talent level needed to get increased. There's no one going to deny that. And this is the way to do it. And because, once again, the market allowed them to do it, there's no competition for players, Rich. It's truly a buyer's market. And because of that, they're getting, you would think you get one tight end, you'd be happy. They got two really good tight ends. So, I think they're taking advantage of the place and the season that they had last year.
Michael Lombardi here on the Rich Eisen Show. Nick Caserio, formerly of New England's front office, now in Houston, with one heck of a situation, and that is clearly understating what's going on with Deshaun Watson. Is his plan really, do you think, to just hold on to the situation, just hold on as long as possible, hope that, they get through the draft season with Watson not saying anything publicly and upsetting any apple cart, and then hoping that when the Texans have mandatory events and that Watson shows up, and that if he does not hold the management to account for forcing him between his team and his money or his I guess, self-worth and his money, between his principles and his money, and actually start playing football for the Texans, for David Culley, like nothing ever happened? Is that really what the plan is going to be?
Well,
Michael?
Obviously there has to be some form of resolution, and someone needs to correct the reason Deshaun is so upset. Now, we do know this for a fact, that last August he stayed awake till 2 o'clock in the morning to watch a check that was written by Cal McNair that had already had DeAndre Hopkins traded to the Cardinals, cash. And he was happy to sign an extension with a no-trade clause in that extension. So something has transpired over the last 7 months. I'm not privy to what that is, but if I'm Nick Caserio, I'm going to hold tight. I'm not going to allow my best quarterback, a player that I built the team around, who I gave a lot of money to as an organization, to deter me. A lot of players are unhappy. I've seen this over my 35-year career in the NFL. Players are unhappy. But players play football. They have to come back and play. And the rules, whatever we read about in the media, whatever the spin that comes from the agents of Watson, the rules favor the Texans. Because once he starts missing games, once he starts missing practices and all that, that signing bonus money has to come back. And you could say, well, that's not a way to handle your best player. Well, I think that's the way to send a message to everybody that you're not going to be bullied into trading. And you've got to take that approach. And you have to take the approach that if he doesn't show up, he'll pay us back the money. It would be like if we had to replace him in the game because he was injured. We just have to move on. You can't let the outside media dictate to what you do, Rich. And that's not going to be a popular popular voice to hear for Nick, but he's got to do that, because if not, he will have problems throughout his team.
Well, I know, but he's going to have Look, Michael, I mean, you're an old school guy. I've got a lot of the old school in me, but you're also well aware of the world. And right there in Houston, I know it's a different sport. You're seeing NBA players get what they want, despite signing long-term contracts. And the NFL, you saw, obviously J.J. Watt get released and just walk out the door. And I understand he's got more time in Houston, and he also was at a different spot of his career and contract and what have you. But this is a 21st century, and if Deshaun Watson doesn't want to play for the team anymore, well, Casario's got more problems than he thinks he does have, because if he's not coming back to play for the Texans, and I don't know if the old way of looking at things is truly going to work in 2021, Michael, to be honest.
Look, basketball is a different sport, and I think that one player in basketball can change. But I also go back to the greatest coach of all time, Don Shula, had Dan Marino. And Dan Marino went to the Super Bowl his second year in the National Football League, Rich. And then from the time Dan Marino turned 24 until the time Dan Marino turned 29, the Miami Dolphins, with the greatest coach and one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, didn't make the playoffs. So football is a team sport. It takes more than just a great quarterback. And so, we've seen this before. In his 12-year career with the Indianapolis Colts, Peyton Manning went to 3 conference championship games. He went to 2 Super Bowls. I think that's a little light for how talented Peyton Manning was. I think they should have gotten more out of his unique ability. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers. 1 Super Bowl win, 1 Super Bowl appearance. I think that's a little light for how great he is. So my point here is it takes a team. And I think that if the team isn't good enough around Deshaun Watson, the team's not going to win, which happened last year. They're trying to make the team better. It's a team sport. Basketball is very individualistic. It's only 5, 6, 7 players. They have a better system in terms of how they control. I think if you're Nick Caserio, you've got to do because you're not going to be able to replace him for what's out there. It's the same thing in Seattle. How do you replace Russell Wilson? How do you get a player back? That when the Bears traded for Jay Cutler, they got Jay Cutler, and Denver got Kyle Orton and a bunch of draft picks. It really didn't work out for Denver that way. So I think you have to be really careful if the right deal comes along. But I think teams are a little bit concerned about trading a boatload of picks for one player when that one player couldn't win games for Houston last year. It takes more than one player, is my point.
No, I hear you, and I guess last one to push on this subject is, when one team can offer you a 23-year-old quarterback back in Tua or Sam Darnold, and I understand that's not Deshaun Watson, but when they can offer you that, as well as a top 5 pick, including in the case of Miami, your own number 1 overall pick back at 3rd overall, and other first-round picks over the next couple of years as the Jets and the Dolphins can also amass their choices to send. Isn't that better than this holdout alternative for the Texans? You can actually get right. You can actually
but the problem,
back.
Rich, is he controls where he wants to go. The rumor is he doesn't want to play in New York. The rumor is he doesn't want to play in Miami. He wants to play in Denver and San Francisco. So now you're Nick Caserio, and now your trade options are limited, especially when he controls where he says he wants to go. So say he says, I only want to go to San Francisco. I'll only go to San Francisco. Well, now San Francisco has all the leverage in the trade. So all the trade scenarios you go through, if he doesn't want to go to the Jets, he says, I'm not going. So it's fool's gold to get that pick. I can't make that deal happen.
A couple minutes that I have left with you, Michael Lombardi. We are on Raider Nation Radio, 9:20 a.m., and you're working with the great Brent Musburger and VSiN and things of that nature. What do you think of what the Raiders have done so far and what their future holds in a division where Justin Herbert, it looks like obviously the Chargers have struck gold there. We know the Chiefs are the Chiefs. What do you think the Raiders are doing now, and how quickly can they challenge for this division, do you think?
Well, they've got to get much better on defense, Rich. I mean, last year they felt like, that they could improve defensively, but they're not anywhere near there. And Ndakwe is an addition to play in the Gus Bradley system. Now, here's the issue that I have. If you watched the NFL closely last year, people that ran the Pete Carroll system of defense, the Gus Bradley defense, the Dan Quinn defense, these teams that ran that down in Jacksonville, they've struggled. Unless you have a dominating defensive front, it's hard to run that. San Francisco was great running that with Robert Saleh when they had Bosa, when they had Solomon Thomas, when they had DeForest Buckner, when they had Armstead. But when they lost some of those players, it wasn't the same defense. So for the Raiders, I think the concern I have is, can they play multiple fronts and coverages on defense, and do they have enough talent? And are they going to have enough money to get those players? Because they spent a lot of money the last few years to try to improve the team, and it hasn't gotten to them yet. You know, they've got a hole at right tackle. They're probably going to waive the center Hudson. They're going to make some other moves to try to create some situations for their team. But defensively, you know, they've got to be able to hit. They don't have the coverage people in the back end. Abram has been a disappointing as a first-round pick. He misses way too many tackles. And they don't have the ability to win up front to rush the passer in a way to where, when you watched them play Tampa Bay, Brady had all day to throw. And I think that's going to be a real issue for him.
Does Dallas have the horses to run that defense since now Dan Quinn is there? Because you're hearing the Cowboys after they signed Dak, and the offense is kind of set as they can hopefully get some of their offensive line back healthy, that the addition of Quinn alone will help coagulate a little bit more on that defensive side of the ball for Dallas. Do you think they've got the horses to run that D?
I love Dan Quinn. He's an emotional. He's one of the best, one of the great guys in the league. But you know, one thing defenses try to do to make quarterbacks uncomfortable is confuse them. And when you watched Atlanta last year, when Dan was the head coach, and they were running his defense, after he left, they got better on defense, and they changed what they did. I think Dan needs to change a little bit what he's going to do, and it's going to have to be an improvement with the Dallas defensive front, because if you come out and run one front and one coverage, and the quarterback knows it, you're going to have really good players up front to win. So that's going to be the challenge with Dallas. And I think Dallas knows they've got to get better up front. I mean, Lawrence is good. You know, they've got to get more players like that.
Before I let you go, give me a good Al Davis story. What do you got? Come on.
Oh, there's so many of them, Rich. You know, I mean, it's
what do you got?
The best. Well, like we were sitting in, he wanted to draft a certain player in the second round, and we fought him for his kid named Jordan Beck. We ended up picking Kirk Morrison in the third. It was a big debate whether we were going to pick him. So when it came time to make our pick in the third, we had an extra third round pick. We said, why don't we pick Beck here? He said, oh heck, I didn't want him I wanted him in the second. I don't want him in the third.
But what? What that means?
Rich, don't ask me to explain, please. I can't. But that's just how that life went. She just went there.
And he didn't say the word heck, did he? Right? You just
no. I cleaned that up way too much.
Light the flame. Light the flame. Okay, so everybody can check out your podcast where all podcasts are got in the GM Shuffle. You with Adnan Verk, correct? And then
yep.
And you're working with VSiN and Brent and The Athletic. Congrats on all that, and let's chat more often, Mike.
Thank you, Rich. Call anytime. Appreciate you.
That's Michael Lombardi of The Athletic and VSiN and so much more right here on The Rich Eisen Show. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.